Oop. Welcome to the Jerry Ratcliffe Show podcast and our special guest for the week, a familiar face to those of you who have tuned into our podcasts over the years, and certainly no stranger to the basketball or sports world or the world in general, because he's world renowned. And I'm talking about John Grisham, author and sports fan. And John, guy I've admired for years and love his work, and just love the fact that he's a regular dude and loves sports like the rest of us. John, welcome.
Thanks, Jerry. Always nice to be here. Always good seeing you.
And our co-host Chris Graham, as usual, and we're going to talk to John today about ACC hoops and maybe drift on to a couple other topics, but mostly ACC basketball. And he's a passionate fan, just like the rest of us. And we'll go from there. But John, this has been one of the more interesting seasons we've had in recent years with ACC hoops. We got last year the conference was considered down a lot. Some people still think it's not among the top leagues in the country. I might debate that, because I think there's some really good teams in this league, but it's kind of up for grabs. Has been all season long.
Yeah, there's no dominant team. It's kind of like last year. We were all surprised last year when Carolina got their act together in March, really, and made a surprising run all the way almost to the very end. It's so different now with Duke with a different coach and Carolina with a different coach. And I'm not saying it's bad, but you just don't have the dominant program. We didn't think UVA was going to be a league leader 6 weeks ago. They had some bad games early. The offense looked completely impotent, in the early games, not scoring much at all. And then suddenly, Tony always finds a way to motivate the team and find the kids who can score, especially this year. We're over 70 points a game this year, which for UVA is unheard of. So, yeah, and you look around the country, you have 3 or 4 teams in the ACC who can make a deep run. Same in the Big Ten. The Big 12 looks pretty strong. SEC looks down. Alabama got beat last night, which is no surprise because Tennessee is very good. Yes. And then out west, you've got UCLA and Arizona at the top, and not a whole lot after that. But it's going to be a fun tournament because there's just no consensus number one in the nation, which makes for a great tournament.
Absolutely. I know that you hold sort of dual ticket citizenship between Charlottesville and Chapel Hill, and get to see a lot of Carolina games and a lot of Virginia games. But I guess the biggest question in the ACC this year is what's wrong with Carolina? Do you have your own theory on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like last year. They lost some terrible games early on this year to this season too. And then last year it seemed like late in the season, Coach Davis was able to get his guards under control because they were taking so many bad shots, and he got them a little more disciplined, and the team came together and just started winning. And there have been flashes of that this year, but not. I mean, they're not a good shooting team right now. They're way down statistically. They're not hitting their threes, and again, they take too many shots that are just low percentage shots. You can't call them bad shots because a lot of times they go in, but they do tend to take too many bad shots. Baycott is my favorite player on the team because he's such a workhorse. He's always around the basket. He's smart. He's always getting the cheap rebound and put it back, or the tough rebound. Leaky Black is a really strong defensive player who's fun to watch, not always a consistent scorer. And you have the 2 guards, Caleb Love and R.J. Davis, who are, really unpredictable. They've been unpredictable all year, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get their stuff together like last year. They've got the talent. They've got a lot of talent on the bench. Some of the kids aren't getting to play that much that, I think maybe should play more, but I can't answer that. I don't. You wonder if something else is going on. You wonder in this day and age, not just with Carolina, but also with a lot of teams, you've got your big players who are making plenty of money now and, driving fancy sports cars and stuff like that. And other players who are playing just as hard, who are not getting that kind of compensation. And that's going to be a huge problem from now on in college sports. And so that's a whole different issue we could talk about for the next 5 hours. But you wonder, some of these teams are they having problems in the locker room? So I don't know. I don't know what's happening down there. I'll say this every time I watch them play: don't sell them short because they've lost 10 games already, which is a lot more than they lost last year. But they are very good, very talented, at times very well coached. But when they lose their discipline, they start losing games. But they have the potential of a deep run into March because they have the talent.
Yeah, Carolina stands going into the weekend at 8-7 in the ACC, 16-10 overall, 11-2 at home. So I'm not sure what the rest of their home schedule is like, but
they got a tough schedule. They have us down there on February the 25th. Then the following week, March the 4th, is their last game against Duke at home, and that's always a great. That's my favorite game, Duke Carolina. Because it's just so intense. And what's happened in the last several years, Duke has won fairly easily at the Dean Dome, and the Tar Heels would go to Cameron and beat Duke at Cameron. And so that game is so unpredictable. They have us there. They go to NC State this Sunday, which is going to be a tough game because NC State's pretty good. So they got 5 games left, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and of course, Virginia is currently tied for the top of the league at 12-3 with Pitt, and Pitt owns the tiebreaker there if things continue to shake out in that direction. And the Cavaliers picked up their 20th win last night at Louisville in a not so pretty performance. We'll put it mildly. The Cavaliers are 12-1 at home, 6-3 on the road, and they will be playing Notre Dame at home here this Saturday. Virginia's remaining schedule is not too bad. They do host Clemson before the season is over, and they go to Chapel Hill. Those are the 2 toughest games, I believe. They got a good chance of hanging on, John, and maybe getting Tony's, I think, Chris, 6th regular season
It'd be the
title.
6th. Yeah.
They're in a great position. They're in a great position to be to make it to win the conference tournament. I mean, the schedule, the regular season. As you know, the tournament is just a free for all every year, and that's what makes it fun. You don't know who's going to come out on top. And what Tech did last year in the ACC tournament, it was remarkable to win 4 games in 4 days, and not just win them, but they spanked everybody and won the tournament. And no one saw that coming. So the tournament is so unpredictable, and again, that's what makes it so much fun. But yeah, I think UVA's in the driver's seat. But like last night, we were 17-point favorites going into Louisville to play the worst team in the league, and lucky to get out. But that's the ACC. Notre Dame comes in Saturday. They're having a terrible season. Coach Bray's leaving after this season, and I hate to see him go because I've always liked him. He brings a lot of color to the game and a fun guy. But he's had several bad seasons in a row, so you got to make a change. UVA will be a 20-point favorite, and who knows what'll happen? It's the ACC. Almost anybody can win on any night, at home or on the road, and that's what makes a conference so intriguing to follow. Is just all the upsets and teams that get hot. When Clemson was 10-0, I was talking basketball with my son Ty, who comes to all the games too, big Wahoo. And we were both kind of laughing. We said, "There's no way Clemson is going to survive this. They're going to start losing a bunch of games, and you can see it coming." And last year, nobody could see Carolina coming out of nowhere to win to almost win the whole tournament. So it's a very unpredictable season in sports. That's what's so much fun.
Yeah, Clemson has dropped off to 11-4 and 19-7 overall. I never was a big believer that Clemson was going to win the league, and they still could. But I just you got to show me before I'm going to buy into that theory. That's for sure. Chris,
I'm going to tap into John your abilities as a storyteller here. The ACC this year, obviously going into the season, just like every other year, Duke, Carolina, Virginia, at least at recent years, Duke, Carolina, Virginia at the top in the preseason, and then everybody else. And you look at the standings right now, it's Virginia, Pitt, Miami, Clemson. Maybe what Jerry said earlier about how the ACC is not getting the love nationwide as one of the top conferences is because we don't have those familiar faces at the top. It's easy when you're writing a book to you create the characters, you maybe build on characters. Right now, people don't know who these characters are at the top of the ACC. How can we fix that?
I'm not sure you need to fix it. I mean, I think it's great the way it is. Where you have different teams every year, when you have more parity. I think. So I don't see a problem. I don't see anything needs fixing. Of course, I want UVA to always be at the top now in the first weekend in April, the Final Four. But again, that's. At one point this year, Kansas lost 3 in a row. TCU beat them by 25 points one day. You can't predict how these teams are going to do. There's just too many games, and nobody's going to be very, very dominant every year. I always get tired of Gonzaga being 28-0, going into their conference tournament because they don't play anybody, and they do okay in March, but they're always overrated. They've had some losses this year, and I don't think they're what they were last year, but I think the days of your perennial champions or number one teams are gone. Somebody may build that program, but there's too much parity. And nowadays with the transfer rules, you don't know who's going to be on your team from one year to the next. You don't know who's going to come in and play one and done and leave. Or there's just so many. The game is so much more unpredictable now than off the court than on the court. There's just so many things happening that are just, we still have trouble stomaching the fact that some of these kids are making, several $1,000,000 a year to play basketball for 1 year and then turn pro. And that's happening right now. Or to postpone the NBA for a year or two because they can make a bunch of money playing college basketball. It's unsettling, for, I guess, old-time fans like me to think about these kids. When money gets involved with a bunch of kids, you're going to have a lot of problems. And I think we're seeing the first wave of that now in college sports.
Yeah, I think when the NIL came out, we had a show about that with Dave Glenn from used to be with the ACC Sports Journal, and I told him I thought it was going to wreck college sports, and I'm still sticking by my theory. But I don't begrudge kids making some money, but I just think it's out of control. And I guess Jimbo Fisher was the first guy, and not saying that he's not guilty of some NIL abuse, but he's the first guy that came out and said, well, we used to have this in the SEC a long time ago. We just called it cheating.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. To me, it looks like it's wrecking college athletics as we know it. But,
well, the big fear among colleges, among ADs at places like UVA and UNC, and I know both those ADs pretty well, is they have 28 sports. And there's only so much money that you can raise from your donors. So the fear is that donors are going to give money to a collective that can go out and buy your point guard, buy a quarterback, buy the great players, and not give as much to the athletic department. Every athletic department is strapped from, well, not, I can't say every, but most of them are strapped for money anyway, because they have way too many sports. And it could be a real problem for some of your lesser, Olympic sports to see some pretty drastic budget cuts because the money's not there, because the money is flowing into the collectives to go purchase the all-stars. And that's one big fear. There are a lot of things to be afraid of in college sports right now. I mean, every coach fears that his star player is going to get purchased by another school for next year. After the football season was over, Drake May, the quarterback at Carolina, allegedly was approached by 2 Big Ten schools offering him a lot of money to come play one more year because they both need quarterbacks next year. That has been denied, but artfully so. And I think the truth is somewhere in between, but he was recruited to leave Carolina after 1 year and go play at another big school. And that's a coach. I mean, can you imagine that your coach, when you're the coach, you've got these kids that you've recruited and raised and trained and all this kind of stuff and brought to a point where they're probably pro prospects, and some other school comes in and buys them out from under you for a year or two. That's a huge fear in college sports. So there's a lot of, as you know, a lot of great uncertainty in the game right now, and no one really knows where it's going. Jerry, there's a lawsuit that's percolating somewhere through the courts that obviously has been filed several months back, but it seeks to get a piece of the pie of the total Division I revenue for every Division I athlete. So every kid who's running track or fencing or rowing or whatever would get a piece of the SEC football money. And so now the lawsuit is still alive. And after the NCAA's lost, so many lawsuits in the past few years to open up NIL, the lawyers are terrified that this lawsuit could go forward to give, again, every Division I athlete a piece of the Division I pie. And that could really, no one can conceive what that would do to the athletic budgets at these colleges. No one knows what can happen because you don't know how the courts are going to rule. When the court, in the Austin case, when the court first ruled that you cannot restrict these kids from making money, the initial thinking was, okay, we'll get T-shirts and merchandise and video games, and we'll sell all that and have a pool of money for our football team, and we'll divide that up, and everybody gets a piece of that. And the court said, no, you cannot restrict what one individual kid might be able to make. So there went that idea. No one really saw NIL right off the bat being as big as it is now. Now it's just a wholesale buying and selling of athletes, offering high school kids, these huge contracts to come play. And no one really saw that coming, but it's here, and it's not going to go away anytime soon because the courts have ruled you can't restrict these kids from making money. There's certain restrictions. You can't, a player cannot take money from a company that, a gambling company or a beverage, alcoholic company or cannabis or adult industry. So there's certain restrictions, and you can't promise a kid money for performance, X number of dollars for a touchdown pass or whatever. You can't, there's certain, my favorite restriction is a college cannot promise a kid money. College can't. Okay. So they go through, he has an agent who gets the promise. That's, that rule is violated every day. Most of the rules are pretty weak efforts to regulate the money, but it's all in play, and it's all changing daily. So
John,
I mean, are you optimistic? I'm not optimistic. Are you guys optimistic?
Well, here's what I'm optimistic about. I'm as a big fan of your writing over the years. I've got so many of your books that I've got like a library in the next room. I hear a lot here. There's lawsuits, there's money, there's shadiness involved. and a lot of this happens in the Southeast. Could this be something that ends up being a John Grisham novel at some point in the future?
Yeah, I mean, everything is fair game. I never thought I would write a book about basketball. I wanted to. I've written 2 football books and a baseball book, and I wanted to write a book about college basketball because I love the sport. And I kept waiting for the inspiration, for the story. I can't just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a story about this and make it happen. I've got to be inspired by something that really did happen. And I can take a real event or a real fact pattern and do a lot of things with it once I've got the basic idea. And I waited for years to have a story for basketball. And right when March Madness was canceled 3 years ago, we were in the middle of the ACC tournament, so it was early March 2000, and I was with a couple of my buddies here in town, and we're in a bar downtown having a beer. We had our brackets out, because when you first get your brackets, you're the smartest guy in the room. Okay, everybody, we're all brilliant, and we're picking our, and all of a sudden on the big sports bar screen, it said March Madness canceled. And we were stunned. How do you cancel March Madness? We lived for it all year. And I thought, oh, this is so awful. And so I was inspired. It inspired me to go ahead and start and finish the basketball novel. I don't know why. I just thought I needed a basketball fix. And the story came together quickly, and the book came out a year later. And so the long-winded answer to your question, I can see a lot of drama here, a lot of money, a lot of drama, a lot of corruption, a lot of intrigue, a lot of lawyers, lawsuits, a lot of really juicy things here. Hopefully no dead bodies yet, behind the scenes.
We know of.
But I always need a couple of dead bodies, but not always. So yeah, I can probably find a novel here one of these days.
I'm also intrigued by the sign behind you for those who might be looking in here when we run this later. Reggie Love attorney. So I'm admitted, I'm a big fan. In your head though, if 30 years of your work or more of your work, I'm looking at Reggie Love attorney, and I'm thinking there's got to be an ACC tie there. There was a Duke player named Reggie Love, but of course your Reggie Love predates the Duke Reggie Love by a few years. But it is just an interesting little coincidence considering we're talking about ACC basketball today.
Yeah, my Reggie Love, the book came out, the client came out in 93, and Reggie Love was a small time lawyer in the city of Memphis, and she was hired by the kid who later became the star. And they were filming the movie in Memphis, and a couple of years later, this is about 1995, I guess 94, and we went to the set one day in Memphis to meet the cast, we normally we'd take the kids to the set one day and meet everybody and hang out and visit, and that was cool. And we'd go back home and never see them again until the movie came out. But we were with Susan Sarandon, and she was very nice and sweet. My kids were talking to her, and I kept looking at the door to her law office. And by then, my wife Renee had already collected a couple of pieces of furniture from the firm, the movie set of the firm. So Renee was already thinking ahead, and so she pulled some strings and got that door at an auction. When the movie's over, oftentimes they'll hold a big auction and sell off a bunch of the set materials and furniture and art and all that kind of stuff for charities. And so Renee bought the Reggie Love door that I've had since 1995, and it's here in my office in downtown Charlottesville, where I am right now. So it's kind of fun. Those are back in the good old days when we used to make movies. We can't get movies made anymore, and we're trying like crazy, and it's just a different world in Hollywood now. Used to it was easy, now it's very difficult.
Apparently, if you wrote comic books, you'd be in a better position, right?
Wow. That world is so foreign to me.
Yeah.
I didn't even read comic books when I was a kid, so I don't know what these Marvel characters are, but they're very profitable these days.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you ever foresaw having any of your books turned into movies again. I know at one time you got kind of frustrated with the process, but do you think that'll ever happen again, or is it?
Jerry, I'm beyond frustration. I'm beyond frustration. I've stopped worrying about it. We tried for years. But at any given time, there are probably half a dozen the books under contract to make movies, and they'll do an option deal for 18 months or 24 months, and the option expires and the rights come back to me and we try again. They're all out there. They're all for sale. And somebody will call today and inquire about one of them, and they talk to somebody. They don't talk to me. They talk to somebody else. The most promising one is a sports movie. George Clooney has written a screenplay for Calico Joe, and I've read it. It's very good. It's a very faithful adaptation of the novel, and he plans to direct the movie. I don't know when. Sometime. I don't think this year. It's February already. I don't see any signs of them wanting to film this year. But he plans to do it, and when Clooney gets behind something, it normally gets done. Other than that, there are various contracts for other books over the years. Sully would be we've had some interest about Sully, the basketball novel, but to me, it just looks very hard to do because I don't know how the problem with most sports movies to me is the action does not look authentic. It's very hard to capture a pro football game or pro baseball and make it look real. And basketball, I think this story would be very difficult to do because some of the things that Sully did in the novel were, thank God for fiction. It'd be very hard to replicate on a real court with real athletes. So there's not been much interest in Sully since the book came out 2 years ago. So we'll see. Calico Joe, Bleachers is the other football book. Playing for Pizza. Yeah, I forgot. Playing for Pizza is under contract with some, I think, TV producer. Don't know what's happening there. So it may happen one of these days, but again, I'm beyond frustration. I'm beyond thinking about it. I'm worried about I'm thinking about the next book.
Yeah. I meant to ask you, I know Sully, you did some research with the North Carolina Central program for that book. And when they came up here back in early November, were you at the game? Did you get to see the coach?
I got there early to meet Coach Lavelle Moten, who's been there for a long time. He played there.
Good guy.
Great guy, fun guy. When I wrote the book, I talked to Coach Moten on the phone, and I wanted to meet him and walk through his gym and see his facilities and all that. And he said, you can't come on campus because of a total COVID lockdown at Central. And so that was kind of the end of that conversation. I was able to kind of sneak back on campus and hooked up with an assistant sports information director who opened the doors, walked me around, and I got to at least see, their facilities and the court and all the things. And the fun stuff was the things they've been able to purchase and install because of their NCAA tournament money. Those teams get money. The more you win, the more you get. And they had done well in a couple of tournaments and got some nice checks, and all that money was well spent. So, but I never met him. They've been very nice since then to invite me back to campus for, whatever, just to say hi and thank you and all that kind of stuff. But I think they were kind of wary, like a lot of people are. When I show up and say, hey, I'm going to write a book about your law firm or your courtroom or your whatever, or your case, people tend to get pretty nervous. And so they were a little bit skittish at first, but with good reason. But I always tell people, look, I'm not gonna. This is fiction, okay? I'm not going to embarrass anybody. It's going to be a good story, or I wouldn't be here. I'm not an attack guy. I'm not going to do a hatchet job on your school. So, but they turned out to be very, very nice, and I owe them a trip down. They invited me several times to come down for, a very nice thank you, and I need to do that.
Yeah, I thought you probably were at that game. I was occupied and didn't get to see the pregame stuff, so I figured you probably connected. Any predictions for the end of the season?
We were in New Orleans last year for the Final Four, and went down with a bunch of Tar Heels, and Just had a great time. The semifinal win against Duke was just something that was great. I'm not a Duke fan, and so that was a lot of fun. But I kept telling myself a month ago nobody thought we would be here. Nobody gave Carolina a chance. So the predictions go out the window. I do the Final Four. I actually put my Final Four brackets on the wall. I have to because Jim Miller does his annual bracket breakfast to benefit CASA. He does it every year on Monday after Selection Sunday. And he always asks me to come take part with, other people in town, Ralph Sampson or Jim Ryan at UVA or whoever you get on the stage. And so he gives you one of the big regionals, and you have to make that prediction. Then you have to make your Final Four prediction, and they put that on the wall. And so for about 5 years in a row now, my Final Four predictions have gone on the wall as a record. Okay, I don't have a single team in the Final Four yet, so my predictions are not very good.
It's awfully hard. I tell you, it's
Very
awfully hard. Chris.
Yeah, I would go down that line too. I'm just worried if from Virginia's standpoint, I don't watch a lot of other basketball other than ACC basketball, but that big Purdue kid scares me. I know there's no dominant team this year, but that guy seems like he's the real deal. Every time I look at stats for him, he's putting up big numbers. He could be a subject of a novel down the line.
Yeah, he's very impressive. Houston came here and we kept it close, but I thought they were real good. They're very well coached. I really like their coach, and the players were they're just athletes, really good. They always make a run. They're going to make a run. Baylor right now is red hot. Texas is hot. Alabama is very good, the best in the SEC. So yeah, I don't know how you start making predictions for March. That's one of the fun things about March is everything goes out the window after the first weekend. Yeah. What I've started doing with my buddies is forget the first two rounds. Let's start with the Sweet 16. That's when it's kind of fun. You've had a bunch of upsets. Most of your good teams are still in the tournament, so let's start with the Sweet 16 and make some bets. And I still lose every one of them.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's why I don't bet anymore.
Well, these are small bets. I'm fascinated by gambling because I'm not a gambler, but I love picking the college football spreads every week. To just look at it, we know these teams so well. You can pick the Virginia games, the SEC games, the ACC and SEC schools. I know, I'm so good at picking those. And I do it against myself with no real money on the line because in the course of a season, if you break even, you're lucky. If you get 50%, you're lucky. And that's football. That's a sport, I think I really know. I don't know about college basketball. Like last night, UVA was 17-point favorites at Louisville. And I was talking to my wife and I said, I wouldn't put 17 points on any ACC team on the road. I just wouldn't do it, and that turned out to be the right bet, but I didn't put any money down. I don't have that gambling gene, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's me too. Your latest book, the Boys from Biloxi,
came out last October. I was working on it a year ago, really hard. Yeah.
You want to tell anybody about that in case they haven't? They might want to rush out and buy a copy.
Well, Jerry, the book came out in October, and I assume by now everybody's read it, so I don't have to worry to talk about it. Okay. No, that's the last assumption I made. It's sort of a different book for me because it's a generational sort of a saga. These two families it's all based on historical background that's fairly accurate, but the Biloxi area is sort of famous area on the Gulf Coast because it was the greatest seafood production area in the country 100 years ago. And the industry was built by really hardworking immigrants from Eastern Europe. For some reason, they congregated. And I met a bunch of these people later on in college and in life from Croatia and Poland and places like that, and a lot of Italians. And they built this seafood industry. And because they were from Eastern Europe, they frowned on dry counties. They frowned on no alcohol, and so Biloxi had this reputation 100 years ago as an area that was pretty wide open for vice, and they had a lot of vice, and it had this certain strip down there where you could get anything, and even when the state was completely dry, you could gamble and you could buy anything you wanted. And Biloxi became sort of famous for that, along with the seafood industry. So I thought it's a very rich locale setting for a novel, and I've always been tempted to go there. And so finally last year I did it. It's a story of two families, two boys who grew up in Biloxi. They're Little League All-Stars together. They're great friends, and one kind of goes one way and one goes the other. And you know that at some point their paths are going to cross at the very end. And so that's all I can tell you. For more, go buy the book. It's been out now since October.
There you go. All right. Hopefully we just sold you some more books then. All right, John. Well, listen, man, thank you so much for taking some of your time out of your schedule for today and talking some hoops and college sports with us. We appreciate you. And hopefully you'll have another trip to the Final Four this year.
I hope so. I hope the Who's make it. We had so much fun 4 years ago in Minneapolis. That was just a dream, being there and being able to walk around the downtown area and walk. We walked to the games and back. It was close enough to do that, and just a great atmosphere. Finally being there with Tony and his team, and then two unforgettable games that we could have easily lost. That was destiny. We were supposed to win in 2019 with those guys, and we did. And it could happen again.
Yeah, it very well could. It very well could. We've seen it all. All right, brother. Well, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you down the road. We'll see you over.
See you, Jerry. See you, Jerry. See you, Chris. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.